The Canvas Series, Episode 15. Hey everybody, it's Raf here, and welcome back to another episode of the Canvas Series, a podcast about up-and-coming entrepreneurs and creators and how they're designing their life to build momentum and get results. The guest for this episode is Michael Tranmer, an engineer turned author, entrepreneur, and coach. And what I love most about this episode is just how raw Michael gets about his story. Just over a year ago, his life was good by most standards. He had his house, his wife, his career, his health. But things took a quick turn, and before you knew it, he was hitting rock bottom and striving to get his life back in order. And throughout this episode, if you listen closely, there are a lot of gold nuggets that we should all keep top of mind, especially during these pivotal, life-changing experiences. And with that, my one ask for you for this episode is to share this with one person who is currently going through a low point in their life right now. Our goal for this episode is to not only break down the mechanics and insights to navigate through this type of experience, but more importantly to grow from it and to help others and create value along the way. So please enjoy this episode and let me know what you think. All right, Michael, thank you so much and welcome to the Canvas Series. I know you're only here in Toronto for a couple of days, so I'm really grateful that you got to come by and jump on the show with me.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you very much, Raphael and Joe as well for everything you do, for all the good content you guys put out, and everything from the bottom of my heart, bottom of your heart. Keep it up. This is great, guys.
Thank you. So, what really attracted me and got me really excited about this episode is your story, right? And to my understanding, there'll be a book coming out later this year about your story. And, I think to really set the stage for the listeners is for everyone to get a sense of, what your life looked like a year ago and what's happened that really kickstarted this lifelong commitment of self-transformation. And I think what you've done for yourself and for others in particular over the last 10 months is absolutely amazing, and that's really what I want to unpack in this episode. So to kick things off, what was life for you a year ago?
Life for me a year ago was pretty damn good, right? I live in Vancouver, BC. I was living there with my wife. I was working as an engineer, which had done for the past 12 years. Living a pretty good life, doing the trips on the weekend, doing the skiing, doing all the things. Got a place to live, so super fortunate about that in Vancouver. Similar situation as you guys have in Toronto. It's pretty pricey. Life was ticking along. Mm-hmm. Life was normal. Life was good.
So what happened?
What happened was the end of my marriage happened. Mm-hmm. And it was obviously very hard for everyone involved. It was very unexpected. It was truly my low point. And it was almost coming up on a year ago now, and to be sitting here where I am now today, with everything that's gone on over the past year, and the new mindset I have now is something that I absolutely did not expect to happen.
That's amazing. So before we jump into those strategies and insights, and I really want to get a sense of all the things you've learned and developed, tried, and found out. Some things worked, some things didn't. I really want to go back to that moment because I think for the listeners, myself, I've never been married, so I can't understand what that experience must have been like. Yeah. And for some of the listeners as well, they have not gone through an experience like that. But I can confidently say that every single person has gone through some kind of loss in their life, and I think we can all relate when it comes to fear or despair or what those those varying emotions, as well as the joy and happiness that comes with coming back, and growing from it. So, given that this all happened within the last year, I really want to understand, like, what were those first day or week or weekends like what was going on, and then what were some of the very low points, and then what were some of the very high points when you really decided that you wanted to be happy again? Like, what did that feel like?
It felt horrible. I mean, in the very beginning, when it was all happening, it was so raw, and I was even typing out in my book today that I've written about that exact moment, really, when it became obvious that it was over, and I let out this groan, this moan that was like a noise I had never made before. And looking back on it now, it was a piece of my heart breaking and soul getting crushed, and the feelings, and yeah, many people have gone through this, as you said, and the feelings is just ultimate sadness, and all of a sudden, like I said earlier, this path I was on, that we were going down, no longer existed anymore. There was a blank canvas. And when you're in a couple situation, you sometimes fantasize about that blank canvas. I didn't want that blank canvas, but it was there, right? And it was just really the fear of these feelings of loneliness that I was having. It was the fear that I was going to live like that for the rest of my life, and that just wasn't acceptable to me. I was not going to let that happen. I was going to do whatever it took to get out of that low point, to feel good again.
Wow. So finishing off that last piece of your sentence, like, you wanted to feel good again. So what did that decision feel like? Like, was that, like a single thought that really sparked that decision? Was this, over a period of time where you felt like you were just sick of being in that position and you want to change? Like, I want people to understand, like, is this a one moment, like, aha thing, or is this something that happens over days and weeks or months? Like,
no, this was more of a gradual thing. But again, you talked about the highs and the lows. And like, even really early on, like, to have that, that freedom presented was both scary, but also somewhat exciting. There were possibilities there, and I write about in the book, right? I all of a sudden had the freedom to buy that piece of art and put it on the wall where I wanted to. And on that very first morning when I woke up after all this went down, that one little bit of optimism and hope, that was the only thing that got me out of bed and going to work. And so it was just early on, it was little wins, and then as it progressed over the next few weeks and months, the wins got a little bit bigger, but the lows were equally as low, right? And so it's just really a commitment to learning and trying to get out of that low point and doing whatever it takes.
Interesting. So that commitment, I wanna unpack that a little further, right? So you made a commitment to learn and try new things. What did that look like? Like, what were you learning about? What was guiding your choices of what you want to learn, who you want to learn from, what you want to try? Like, what did this look like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I recognized that I needed a lot of help. There was stuff going on in my head that was really exciting, and there was a lot going on, a lot of ideas, a lot of realizations happening. It was due to a lack of sleep and poor nutrition. So early on, I recognized that I booked a counselor immediately to make sure that I was okay, because there was truly an incredible amount of things buzzing through my brain. But at the same time, I recognized that I needed input and advice from other people. So I leaned on friends, I leaned on family, I got advice, and I listened to it. As a guy who is still a little stubborn, but more stubborn in the past, I made a point of listening to those who had been in hard situations before and learning from them. And some of the best advice that I got early on was, be with friends, be with family. exercise, make plans, focus on work, be busy, make plans to travel. And then also at the same time, be alone, feel the feels, feel like crap, cry it out, cry in the street. And during that, it was November, right? This was November last year in Vancouver. And so as Canadians, we know what Vancouver is like in November. It's miserable.
Yeah.
And so it really was, it was absolutely perfect. And I spent so many nights out walking alone in the rain with a hoodie on, just getting soaked, listening to music and just crying it out. But at the same time, there were all these realizations about the past and what had gone wrong and what I was learning and all that stuff, that I would pull out this piece of paper that I now traveled with nonstop from my pocket and, write things down that I would later write down in my journal when I got back home. And so all of this was quite new to me, right? And it was such a powerful experience. But yeah, it really started with acknowledging that I needed some outside help to get through this. And fortunately for me, I had a lot of access to that.
That's good. That's great. So as you were, navigating those early days, you began learning a lot and consuming a lot of different kinds of content. I believe you mentioned things like, understanding how our brain works, understanding why you were feeling certain things, getting certain thoughts, behaving in certain ways. So I'm curious, what are some of the top, 2 or 3 of the psychological or neuroscience things that you've learned, and how did you apply those on your own life in terms of personal development and facilitating this transformation?
Yeah, and I think I think that came a couple months later. I mean, like in terms of content, in the early stages, I was learning a lot about relationships and what had gone wrong. So when I was in a position next time, in that similar position, I would do whatever it took to have a better relationship. And so Brene Brown was one of the folks out there that has some of the best relationship information, and so I learned a lot from her. And then in terms of what all these realizations that were going on in my mind, I've been a fan of Eckhart Tolle for a long time, and I've read his books before, The Power of Now being one of them. And I read them 5 or 6 years ago, and some of his other books, and I really didn't understand them for the most part, because it's technical, high level stuff. But I remember reading one last December, and finally everything was really making sense. And I remember talking to my friend about this and saying, yeah, I really understand what these books are saying. And so to get to your point about the top 3 things, and I think that came even a couple months after that, it's just the power of your mindset is sort of number one. Just how you are able to really control your thoughts and choose to be happy, right? We are not our thoughts. We're the one who observes our thoughts. So to be able to have that awareness, right, that means that you can really get to work on it and choose the ones that you want to hang on to. And so that's a really, really powerful realization to have, right? To know that if we want to feel a certain way, it's fully within our power.
Interesting. So as you were learning a lot of these things, you had mentioned to me that you started to, share your lessons and experiences with others, and that really resonated with people, and I can see why. So how did helping yourself and, going through a transformation yourself lead to you helping others and endowing your new knowledge and experiences and insights onto other people, and really dedicating your life now to helping people go through their transformation? Like, what did that jump look like?
Yeah, so there was a lot going on with me personally over the winter, and at a certain point, I started to feel more good than bad, right? There were still highs and lows, right? And that's why I got this wave tattoo, sort of symbolizing the highs and the lows of life. And at a certain point, I made the commitment to hiring a coach of my own, and that was somewhere February, March. And I was talking to her about this, and she's like, and I'm like, why can't I just pin my life on high, right? why can't I just, be in the sweet spot the whole time? And she totally blew my mind when she said, you can. And I was like, wow, thank you. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to make the commitment to do. And so, yeah, I sort of started to unpack all these things that I was learning and sharing them with my friends and family. And then, yes, obviously sharing them online on Instagram, just because, it was too good not to share the stuff I was feeling and the experiences I was having. And I wanted to share with hopes that, if others were going through tough times as well, or if anything I shared would help them, then, that was my responsibility to do so.
So then, shortly after that, you took some time to Costa Rica to, write your book, to, work on your coaching business, to, I suspect to get some time for yourself to learn and grow and develop. Walk me through that kind of lifestyle that you designed, because I think, some of your past content, you said that this was the lifestyle, right? So I'm curious to hear, like what did you design for yourself, and what inspired that, and what steps did you take to get yourself there?
Yeah, and that goes back a couple questions to mindset, and one of the top 3 things that I learned, and one of the things that I've learned through this whole process is the reality of being able to manifest your dreams. It's real. It can happen. And I know this because I did it and I lived it. And so there's a story that I write about early April when I'm out in Victoria, BC. I was working there last winter, and there was a day off from work, my engineering work. And so I'm out on the coast. It's a Thursday morning. It's gorgeous. It's sunny. Everyone else is at work. I go surfing in the morning. I go to this cafe. I have a coffee. I have a sandwich. And then, I do some work from my phone for an hour, and that feels nice. I probably have another coffee after that. And then I do some reading, and then I do some writing. And then, the sun is up. It's been a long day already. I have a nap on the picnic table, because why wouldn't you, right? There's nobody else around. And then after that, I go out for a beach walk and take some pictures. And, I'm sitting there halfway through all this, and I text my sister and like, I'm living the dream, actually. Like, this is it. This is how I want to spend my days, exercising, being outside, working, being productive, right? Creating, learning, reading, writing, and just being still and being present and being in nature. Like, that, for me, is my dream life, and everyone has their own, which is very important for people to follow. And so the realization that was possible, afterwards, now I'm, from that point onwards, I'm like reading even more, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, huge guy, right? On how to control your thoughts and get what you want in your mind. And so afterwards, I really start leaning into that. Now that I know that it was possible, that was just a fleeting moment, right? That was just a day. And so, yeah, I was really fortunate to have these last 2.5 months just cruising through Central America, where, I could live that every single day. And now with that momentum, the intent is, and I'm going to just continue that on for the rest of my life, right? And it's fully possible. And it's, I think you may ask me about this, but it takes a lot of work.
I was actually just going to ask you that, because I think in some of your content you've written, it's half of the equation to visualize it, to want it, to set your goals and dreams. And I must admit, whenever I hear things like The Secret and stuff, I cringe a bit, because I personally don't like, I personally believe that you have to work hard. You have to work smart, but you have to work hard. You have to put in the time and effort every single day to really make that happen. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short, right? Like, people want all these things, they say it, they may even put it online, but they don't put in the work. And along that work journey, there's gonna be a lot of shitty days that happens, and that's normal. So walk me through that. Like, why is this the half of the equation that everyone just forgets about?
People are lazy, straight up. People are lazy. Yeah, I got a message the other day in my inbox on Instagram, and guys like, I've been practicing the law of attraction. I just think about it all day long, but my dreams aren't coming true. And I'm like, dude, are you actually doing any work and taking any steps towards making whatever you're after come true? And he's like, oh, okay, all right. And it's reality, right? It's super important to have a visualization of where you're going. And I've, before in my old life, in my, 12 years of engineering, I didn't have that. But now I do. And now it feels so good every morning to get out of bed and know where I'm going. But that's sort of step one, right? You gotta I know I want to write a best-selling book and travel the world on a book tour. With my friends and my family and my future partner, and I want to change the world. But that's not going to happen if I don't write the book and type the book out and invest in money to get the book promoted and hire the right people to do it properly. That's a pretty simple example, but it's sort of that clear cut, and that is a lot of work to make that happen. But that's just me. I'm up for it, right? That's my ambition, and it's really important for people to be in line and realistic with their goals and their ambition.
And so I really like that point. And I think in some of your past content you were saying that how just because you're down in Central America and whatnot, you spent 0 days lying on the beach doing nothing. So why was that so important to you? And walk us through what one of your days down there may have looked like. And I really want to show people what it takes to really do something despite being in Central America or having a very big, lofty, very challenging and scary goal. I want to show people it's a daily commitment to yourself, to the people you want to serve, and ultimately to what you want to accomplish. And that's something that really captivated me in your content and your story. It's that commitment, right?
Yeah. And the fact is it's 2018, and as long as there's internet, and that was a challenge down in Central America. It goes out every couple days, and I write about some very inopportune times when that happened. But the fact is, you can do work from anywhere, and and one of my things is helping some types of industries that are still not quite on board with that, but fortunately a lot are these days. But in terms of a typical day, I was just so fortunate to have that time down there, right? It's a beautiful part of the world. But for me, it had to be purposeful and intentful and productive 2.5 months, or else, I would have gotten back to where I am now, about to go back to Vancouver, with nothing but, a sunburn. And I may have been a little bit better at surfing, but now I've got a business going. I've got a book that's done, right? That feels really good. And so a typical day, right? I would get up early, 5 or 6 a.m. It starts with meditation and some sort of exercise, yoga, going for a beach run, or ideally surfing, depending on which location I was in. And then there's coffee in there for sure. And then afterwards, that sort of sets me up for a really productive morning. And depending on which location I was, it was usually the writing was in the morning, so 2 to 3 hours of writing every morning, and that was 1,000 to 1,500, sometimes more words every day. And for me, the way I was writing, I was going through my journals from last year, earlier this year, and into last year, and then just turning it into a book. And it was a painful experience at a time. It was a funny experience at a time. But it was a really great way to go through and dissect that period of my life. And the point of me sharing my book and my story is obviously to inspire and help others. And so the writing just came very naturally and flowed quite easily. But was pretty exhausting. So after a writing stint, there was usually a nap in there, and then the afternoon, I mean, it was probably spent either working on the coaching business, or I'm still doing a little bit of engineering work on the side as well. And then ideally there would be a sunset surf session, good food with some people I'd met down there, and then learning would have happened on a podcast on the run in the morning, or it happens in reading at night, or an evening run. But there was always learning every single day. And then, if I made it till 9 p.m. at night and I was still awake, that was a victory. And then
for sure,
I'm done by then. Like that was 7 days a week, right? There's no real weekends. And the point is that is my dream day. That was my dream life. And so it doesn't feel like work to me. And that's just such a wonderful feeling to have, and a feeling that, I want others to have. And that's something I work on with my coaching clients as well, right? But you have to be crystal clear on what sort of dream life you want, right? Because it's not mine, and it's not yours. Like, people need to clear away the crap in the world and get crystal clear on where they want to go. And so my point of all of this is, it's possible, but like you said, it takes a ton of work.
So when you set that goal, right, and you become crystal clear about it, I know you in the past you've talked about making it public, right, to hold yourself accountable. You've also talked about having not just 5-year goals or 1-year goals or monthly goals, but goals every single day, right? And that's something I do as well. Every morning, as part of my morning routine, I set a goal that I must do or complete before I go to bed that night. And I don't always get it, but my thought process was, if I can win 365 days, then I've won a whole year. If I win enough years, I win my whole life, right? So that's kind of how I approach it. So I'm curious, like, when you work with your clients, like, what is how do you help them through this process, and how do you get them started is really my question.
Yeah, how I get them started, I mean, depends on each individual case, but if they were like me, and I just think about my process, the starting point is dealing with your shit, right? And that's what I did for my first 2, 3, 4 months after the separation happened, and that's painful, and that's a lot of up and down.
So what's that mean? Does that mean like sitting with it and really embracing it? What do you mean? Okay.
And I borrow sitting with it from a good friend of mine in Vancouver. And a lot of things that I'm noticing, a lot of patterns out there, is that people don't sit with it enough, and to sit with it means you gotta spend time alone. You have to. And I was so fortunate that this timing for work took me away, out of my Vancouver situation into Victoria last winter, where I could be in a new location, but also, have a lot of alone time in the evenings. And because when you're alone, you have the opportunity to be aware of your thoughts. And if you're with someone else, or if you're, constantly watching movies or something, or just getting other distractions, you don't have that time and that space to do that. So it's dealing with your shit, and then it's getting clarity and sort of removing all the clutter in your life. And that is something I believe I am really, really good at, and that's why I created all this room to take in this other content and learning and books and continue to do so, because I recognize and once you hear this, I think you'll recognize it. You'll hear it from a lot of other people out there as well. Like, there's a lot of noise out there, right? It's everywhere. It's in our bags. It's in our books. It's on our phones. It's in the media. It's in the street. And it comes from a lot of other people too. People make a lot of noise, and so one of the things I really try to focus on is, like, my phone is always on silent, right? I remove the clutter. I remove the noise. I make a point to really simplify my life and not make too many plans in a day or a week, and really build in space to allow, back in the beginning, to sit with it.
Okay, so So once one of your clients have sat with it, have really internalized it, embraced it, have cleared some of the clutter, I get the sense they don't necessarily have a clean slate, but they've cleared a lot off their situation. They're aware of what's on it now. They've developed that sense of self-awareness.
Yes.
What's next? Like how did they
next it's goals, and it's a lot of people, a lot of guys. Like I work with a lot of guys who are 25 to 45 and sort of mid-career, just like I was, right? Going, okay, I've done this 10, 12, 7, 5, 15 years. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And it's not super clear in the beginning, right? And like I am fortunate that all this has happened to me, and I'm super grateful that life happens for me and not to us, right? And I was able to have this realization and transformation and all of this. But for my clients, it's getting. We start with long-term goals. It's 10 years, but when you ask someone what their 10-year goal for their career is, they have no idea, which if they're not in the industry they really want to be in. And that's fair, that's true, that's honest. So what I suggest to do is just get a better idea of what the feeling is that you want to have with your career when you're that far out. Do you want to be the person in charge of a lot of people, or do you want to be doing something technical on the side and quiet? Like what do you sort of visualize for that sort of thing? And then from that, it's sort of, we work backwards down to more short-term goals, and then work through, working through fears and blocks and insecurities and things like that. And all along this journey, it's pretty cool to see this clarity starts to develop. And then you sort of circle back to this 10-year goal when we're towards the end of the process. And all of a sudden, things make a lot more sense about where these guys want to go, and where people really feel their true purpose and their passion in this life is.
So you mentioned there about fear and blockers, and that's something that's very interesting. And I know in a lot of your past content, you've talked about why it's so important to give zero fucks. And I would say for myself, when I started the podcast, when I've done a lot of things, while that's very conventional, wisdom and insights, it is very, very hard to not give a fuck. And I will say that from personal experience. And I think you mentioned that as well. It took some time to really develop that confidence to stand behind your message, stand behind your content. It is not easy. So, I want to bridge the gap for the listeners here, right? They've heard from a lot of folks like Gary Vee and all these people about not giving a fuck. Cool. But that's not an overnight thing. So how can someone learn and develop the skills or the capacity to not give a fuck? Like what does that look like?
It looks like fuck it. And again, I was super fortunate. Like I had this trauma happen to me in my life, and where I was going all of a sudden stopped, and I had this opportunity to create a new canvas, a new life. And I really had nothing to lose, right? And that's sort of one vein, but the other vein is like fuck it. Like it's just one life. Like in the past 2 days, I have heard of a former co-worker of mine that I worked with ago many years. He's dead. He died unexpectedly. He's early 50s. He was early 50s, and that's not old. And so that was very unexpected. And then today, just this morning, I heard of someone that I know from many years ago who has breast cancer, right? And the point is, like life is short. And yeah, it is super hard. And I remember back, you can see sort of the transformation through my posts. And I told you, Raphael, you can see like my first selfie really happens in early March. And like, I still remember, and this still happens to me today, right? When I post something that's very vulnerable, I'm like, I think of specific people and what they're gonna think about it. And I'm like, I got this thing in my hand, and I'm like, no, what are they gonna think? I'm like, fucking fuck it. And then you put it out there, right? And the point is, like, when you be your true authentic self and you share what you want to share and you be vulnerable, and then when you get, it's not all about likes and comments, but when you get a comment back that really touches someone, and you can feel that through Instagram and social media, and it's really quite interesting. And when you feel someone connect with your inner being, it's everything. It feels really good to know. And like in a world of 7.5 billion people, someone else out there is probably thinking the same as you. And so you're better off just giving zero fucks and sharing who you really are, and working really, really hard about not giving a fuck about the people that you're trying to impress that you probably don't even really like anyways, right?
So it's a mindset, sounds like.
Well, everything's a mindset.
Right. So, for myself, I found that, every night as part of my reflection practice, and that's something I talked about in the podcast I just launched today, I used to ask myself a question about, what was something I did that, made me feel really uncomfortable. And the whole rationale behind that was to make salient of doing those things, of reminding myself and giving myself credit for those moments of not giving a fuck.
Yes.
So those are some of the tactical things that I do.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you've seen from other people, from your clients, from yourself? Like, what are those little habits and routines that don't seem significant but have made a difference in my life?
In terms of mindset and not giving a fuck and things like that. Yeah, I think it's just really something that needs to be. It's like you said, you gotta be easy on yourself, and you gotta give yourself credit when you do have those wins. And we've all heard do something, one thing that scares you every day. Yeah, you sort of need to. And a lot of the stuff that I read about Dr. Joe Dispenza and mindset and creating this new perspective on life, and it all relates to doing new things, having new experiences. And the reason that is that you can actually rewire your brain. You can use those neurons, you can make new connections, and you can use and build and grow parts of your brain that are not being used. Like a lot of, I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of people, and myself included, and like humanity in general, doesn't use the full capacity of their brain. And the way you tap into that is by doing new things and by, doing things that scare you every day. And then when you do things that scare you every day, you strengthen these connections, and they become less scary. There is a science behind this, and it's absolutely incredible. And that's what was blowing my mind and continues to blow my mind all through last winter, was all these new perspectives that I was having. Having a technical background, I needed to understand this better, right? So I learned more about the sources and learned all about how people have proved this about the brain and all that. And once I learned that, I was like, okay, time to accelerate this quite a bit, right? And that's when I stopped drinking in April, and I replaced booze with vitamins, because I learned about how important vitamins and being healthy and exercise, everything is for your brain. Right? And it's it all just sort of snowballs together, sort of a long-winded, deviating answer to your question. But when you do things that scare you every day, you get used to it, right? And that's because your brain gets used to it and becomes more comfortable. And then, give yourself credit for that and move on to the next one and build that other part of your brain and strengthen it up.
To clarify, though, I assume when you say to do new things or do things that scare you, I think there's often this misconception that you have to do big things, grand things. You got to travel to Costa Rica. You got to do this. You got to, build a business. You got to, to me, it's the little things.
Yes.
It's the little things, right?
And I wrote a post about this too. Like, just please, if you want to change something in your life, do something different. What is something different? Walk home a different way from work or school. Go to a different grocery store. Use your other hand for the phone or something, right? Join a baseball team that you've never done before. Go to a different restaurant. These are the small things, and they make a huge difference. And for me, it was I'm so fortunate to be able to go to Victoria last winter. I mean, I've lived in Victoria before. I went to school there, but it had been a while, so the place was new. So I was having these new experiences, new restaurants, new coffee shops, new work site, all those things, new place I was living in. And you're exactly right. It is just the buildup of all these small little things. And, as Einstein said, and turns out the guy's pretty smart and pretty right, to change, you have to do something new. It's as easy as that.
Right. So, to build further on this mindset conversation, you've talked about really taking responsibility, right, and really owning it. So I'm curious to hear, how can someone develop that mindset of really taking ownership of their thoughts, of their emotions, of their decisions, of their behaviors, of their life as a whole? What are some advice you'd give for someone like that?
Yeah, it's hard, and you have to learn how to self-motivate. And I've been good at that through exercise my whole life, so that feels good. But that was, I've spent all these years exercising and training. I did an Ironman, all this stuff, right? But I never spent time between my ears. And
so is it a matter of building some form of discipline and practice? Like, that's how I do it personally, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's how I, really help myself develop, hone, maintain a sense of responsibility. It's every morning. I think you do as well, the whole cold shower thing, right? Like, I think there's the physiological benefits to it that are scientific and whatnot, but a big thing for me, it's that I hate cold shower. Like, I absolutely
nobody likes cold shower. I had one before I came. I was having the most glorious hot shower, and like, who in their right mind would crank it on cold?
Especially in Canada, in the winter morning, that's the worst. So that's how I developed a sense of responsibility. It's I shock myself. I wake. The first thing I remember every single day, it's that I have to take control, otherwise I could never do the cold shower. And it takes a lot of discipline. What do you do?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people, it's the discipline and it's the accountability, and that not to toot the horn too loud, but that's where coaching is, like, it's really taking off these days, because it is that accountability that a lot of people are missing. I mean, you can have accountability with your partner or your friends or your family, but it's not really the same. So to have like a third party that you're accountable and you check in with every week or throughout the day as well, that really helps. And that's like the same sort of thing that people have with these watches that count your steps, right? It's getting that, if you need the external accountability, get that. I know there's certain times of the year, sort of November, December, that I need a little extra push to exercise. And so I pay money to go to a gym and sign up for classes. Like, if I pay money, I'm going, right? And sometimes I recognize throughout the year that I need that. And again, it sort of all comes back to mindset and self-awareness, to using the tools and sitting down and think about, what you need throughout the week, throughout your life, to do the things like exercise and be healthy like we want to, and make the investment, or sit down with a friend and say, listen, you and I are gonna watch each other this next month, and just set something up, or else and do a change, or else at the end of the next month you're gonna be the same.
Yeah, like side thought, I recall listening to a podcast with Tim Ferriss, and he was talking about there's this app, I can't remember what it's called, but I'll link in the show notes, but you commit yourself to something publicly, and there's some dollar amount, some fiscal amount that's tied to it, and if you don't do it, that amount gets donated to charity, and it's that whole idea of this once you put your money in, people are more motivated to follow through, because it's a lot more salient, right?
And then the same thing that one of the posts that I have was like, post your goals online, post them on Instagram, right?
Yeah, why do that?
Why do that? Because when I make a post that says I'm not drinking and I'm having cold showers every day, right? I'm accountable to everyone that goes out to. I 2 hours ago, when I'm sitting in the shower and I'm turning that thing on to cold, I'm like, damn, right? People like this is what I said I would do. This is, I know this is good for me, and I know I need an extra little kick to to make that turn of the dial. And so it's just really effective when you put it out there in the world. And that's just another tip to hold yourself accountable for whatever it is. Like, why not do that at the start of every month, right? I want to run 3 times a week. I want to meditate 4 times a week. I want to, try a new grocery store, right? It's just something that's, I find is pretty effective.
Awesome. So why don't we jump into the fire round of questions. First question I normally ask people is their morning routine, but I think you already shared that. So do you have a ritual before you go to sleep?
Before I go to sleep, I want to know what I'm doing the next day. And I'm a paper and pen guy. Obviously I use the phone a lot. I think you know that. But I only use it to put out content and not bring in content. And then that's sort of an aside. But in terms of getting ready for the next day, I'm a paper and pen type of guy. So I put down what I want to do the next day. It's meditate and whatever this type of exercise I want to do. This morning I went for a run in Toronto. I love going for a run when I'm in a new city. It's such a great way to see the place. So I get my list for the next day. Ideally, I'll do some reading. I prefer to read, hardcover or softcover books. Paper. I like paper, but I haven't been able to do that the last little while because my bag is getting super heavy. Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm looking forward to getting back to Vancouver to read actual real books again. And just really, and I've seen this sort of patterns emerging too, that people, especially in the summer, right? People are so jacked up to do so much on the weekend that they roll in at midnight on Sunday completely bagged and not set up for the next day, not set up for the week. And that just sort of ruins their Monday, which makes them feel crappy and erase all the good times they had on the weekend. And for me, it's just really getting ready for the next day.
So what is one book you'd recommend everyone to read?
Yeah, it's definitely it's The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And the reason is he really helped me think differently, develop that self-awareness and recognize what these thoughts are, that we can be aware of these thoughts that are going on in our head, and we can choose to pick and choose which ones we want to take with us on our journey.
Mm-hmm. So what is one decision that has had a profound impact on your life?
Yeah, it's pretty easy one to answer that. It's just facing that big ass fear to be vulnerable and share all of this and open up to the world. But the beautiful part of all of this whole journey, this whole transformation is opening up to the world. The world opens up to you. And here we are right here discussing this. This is something I had never dreamed of, but now I'm so happy as part of my life because it's made my whole life and my whole days way more enriched, and it drives the purpose and passion in my life. But and the way that was done was going right towards that fear mm-hmm. of being vulnerable and sharing.
So what is one question the audience should ask themselves?
Well, in coaching, when you have a life coach, the purpose is to help my clients, never ever tell them what to do, but help them develop the same self-awareness and skills to and self-motivation to keep their engines running on their own eventually and drive them into the future. And the way that is done is developing, a really strong capacity to think for yourself and be aware of your thoughts. So I would ask the listeners to, really sit down and ask themselves, what do they think? What are their thoughts? What thoughts are they having each day that they want to continue and take with them on their journey? Which ones are super negative and dragging them down, and why are they dragging them down? And identify those thoughts and develop and think about a way to get those out of your life, because it's it's really transformative to be able to have this really powerful awareness of your thoughts.
For sure. And just being self-aware has, completely changed my perspectives of the world, but also of myself and how I conduct myself every single day. So I can definitely relate to that. Before I ask the final question, there is a quote that I do want to mention in your content that, of all the pieces I dug through, this is the one that really stuck out to me. You had said, 5 months in, I can honestly say that the greatest effect on my overall happiness has been through my successful commitment to this resolution. So the last question is, what is one actionable piece of advice that you want everyone to implement immediately so that they can commit themselves to a life of transformation and really build momentum towards their version of success?
It's to focus on positivity and the commitment that I made at the beginning of the year, and so this was the really big, putting it out there, that my one New Year's resolution was to be present and really focus on that. But for the listeners, if there's one thing that I can pass on to bring a little bit more joy to people's day is to really learn how to focus on positivity, and that gets a lot of people's back up, because there are a lot of horrible things going on in the world, absolutely. But it's the little things, it's the complaining, it's the constant negativity. To be positive, to live a positive lifestyle, you really have to eliminate the negativity. You may have to leave behind some friends and family for a while if they're in a constant swirl of negativity, and you recognize that you want a more positive, happy life. You may have to set them aside for a while, and it's really, really hard. But what that does is open up more room to bring more positive into your life. And when you start identifying with that, you recognize that there's a lot of positive, happy people out there, right? But you have to, again, have that awareness to set aside the negativity and focus on, stop following negative crap and follow positive stuff. And it's incredible how effective that is. It really is.
Michael, thank you so much for
Hey everybody, it's Raf here, and thank you so much for listening to the Canvas series. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a rating and a review. As well, please share this with one person who you believe will absolutely benefit from this conversation. The Canvas series is all about content and community, and we absolutely need your help in getting the message out there. As well, feel free to follow along on social media at canvas.series for everyday discussions and content. Until next time, my friends.